K-drama cycle begins. March 2026 didn't arrive loudly for Faye and Yoko. It crept in, quiet, deliberate, and perfectly timed. For months, fans sensed a shift. Not in headlines, not in official announcements, but in the pattern. Subtle schedule overlaps. Carefully timed appearances. Projects teased but never fully named. And then suddenly, March hit, and everything aligned. Faye was everywhere, but never in excess. One fashion appearance sparked weeks of conversation. One short clip from a closed-door project sent fan communities into theory mode. What made it different wasn't just visibility. It was control. Every move felt intentional, as if 2026 had already been mapped out long before anyone noticed. Yoko, meanwhile, played a quieter game. Fewer interviews. Less noise. But when she appeared, she anchored the moment. Fans began noticing how her presence shifted narratives, not as a reaction to Faye, but as a force moving alongside her. Not chasing attention. Commanding it. Then came the turning point. A leaked production detail, quickly deleted, never officially addressed, hinted at Faye's secret co-star. Not a random name. Not a safe choice. Someone strategic. Someone whose past projects suggested range, tension, and risk. And suddenly, the March takeover made sense. This wasn't just about popularity. It was about positioning. Fans realized this wasn't a coincidence-driven rise. It was a coordinated transition, from rising stars to cultural anchors. The kind of move that separates viral moments from lasting relevance. By the end of March, the conversation had shifted. People weren't asking if Faye Yoko would dominate 2026 anymore. They were asking how far it would go, and who else was already part of the plan. And the most unsettling part. Neither Faye nor Yoko rushed to explain anything. No denials. No confirmations. Just momentum. Which made one thing clear. March wasn't the peak. It was the opening move. The silence that followed only made the takeover feel bigger. Instead of clarifications, fans noticed patterns tightening. Faye's calendar suddenly looked sealed, projects overlapping just enough to suggest something major, but never colliding. Yoko's name began appearing in places it hadn't before. Quiet industry mentions, closed events, insider chatter that stopped short of headlines. It felt less like coincidence and more like strategic alignment. Then came the reactions. Fan bases that once operated separately started moving as one. Edits multiplied. Old clips resurfaced with new meaning. A single behind-the-scenes photo, nothing more than a shared space, blurred faces, and bad lighting, triggered days of speculation. Not because it confirmed anything, but because it fit the timeline too well. And that leaked co-star detail? It refused to disappear. Even after the original post vanished, fragments of it lingered, screenshots without context, names half-covered, schedules that didn't quite add up. Fans began piecing together a theory. Whatever Faye was preparing required distance, secrecy, and trust. The kind of project that couldn't survive premature attention. Yoko's role in all this became clearer by what she didn't do. No public reactions. No playful deflection. No subtle hints. Instead, she stayed steady, almost protective of the silence itself. To fans, that restraint spoke louder than any confirmation ever could. By late March, industry insiders were already adjusting their language. Not rising. Not promising. They started saying locked in. And when April loomed, one thing was undeniable. Faye Yoko had shifted the power balance without ever declaring war. No announcements. No dramatic reveals. Just presence, precision, and patience. Which left fans with one lingering thought. If this is what they're willing to show, what are they still hiding? By the time April arrived, the atmosphere had changed completely. What once felt like speculation now felt like waiting. Industry schedules quietly adjusted. A few unrelated projects were pushed back. Brand campaigns that usually leaked early stayed unusually tight-lipped. Even entertainment reporters, normally quick to chase rumors, began using careful language, hinting at coordinated appearances and unannounced collaborations without attaching names. Fans noticed something else too. Timing. Faye's past interviews resurfaced. Lines that once sounded casual now felt intentional. Mentions of wanting a role that redefines perception. Comments about working with someone who understands silence as much as performance. At the time, no one connected the dots, but now, those dots pointed straight toward Yoko. Yoko, meanwhile, became the quiet center of gravity. Her social presence didn't grow louder, it grew sharper. One post. One caption. One emoji placed just ambiguously enough to send fan theories spiraling for days. Not baiting. Not denying. Just enough to signal that nothing happening was accidental. Then came the soft confirmation. Not from an announcement, but from access. Closed-door events where both names appeared on guest lists. Separate entrances. No joint photos. Yet the same insiders kept repeating a phrase that sent shockwaves through fan circles. They're already working like a unit. That's when the leaked co-star rumor evolved into something bigger. It wasn't just about who might appear alongside Faye, it was about why that person was chosen. Fans began to believe this project wasn't built around star power, but chemistry, control, and long-term impact. Something designed to last beyond one season, one press cycle, one trend. By mid-April, anticipation had turned into belief. Not belief in a rumor, but belief in a plan. Faye Yoko wasn't chasing 2026. They were engineering it. And as the first real teaser date whispered its way through private chats and locked forums, fans realized the truth. The takeover hadn't started in March. March was just when everyone else finally noticed. Faye Yoko 2026. The March takeover and the secret co-star that changed everything. March 2026 didn't begin with an announcement. It began with silence. No trailers. No press conferences. No flashy countdowns. And yet, the industry felt it first. Schedules quietly shifted. Projects that had been locked for months suddenly moved dates. Brand deals that usually leaked weeks in advance went dark. Entertainment journalists, normally eager to break exclusives, started choosing their words carefully, hinting at strategic collaborations and long-term positioning without naming names. Fans sensed it immediately. Something was happening behind the scenes, and it centered on two names that had never officially shared a headline before, yet somehow felt inevitable. Faye and Yoko. At first, it looked like coincidence. Faye's calendar suddenly cleared in early March. Yoko's public appearances slowed, replaced by private meetings and closed-door events. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. But when fans lined up the timelines, the overlap was impossible to ignore. This wasn't absence. It was preparation. Older interviews began resurfacing online. Comments that once felt casual now sounded deliberate. Faye had once spoken about wanting a project that reframes how people see me, not louder, but deeper. Another time, she mentioned working with someone who understood restraint, timing, and emotional weight more than spectacle. At the time, those words passed quietly. Now, fans replayed them like clues. Yoko's past statements came next. She had talked about partnerships that felt built, not marketed. About choosing collaborators who could move in silence and still dominate the room. About stepping away from the obvious path to create something with longevity. Suddenly, those philosophies aligned. Too perfectly. Then came the shift in fan behavior. This wasn't the usual rumor cycle. Instead of chasing blurry photos or anonymous tips, fans started tracking patterns, locations, production schedules, industry movements. Forums filled with side-by-side timelines. Comment sections became strategy rooms. And the more they analyzed, the clearer it became. Faye and Yoko weren't reacting to opportunity. They were controlling it. By mid-March, the phrase started circulating quietly among insiders. They're working like a unit. No confirmation followed. No denial either. And that silence spoke louder than any statement could. The first real crack in the wall came from an unexpected place. Not a paparazzi photo, not a leaked script, but access. Closed industry events where both names appeared on guest lists. Different arrival times. Different seating. No shared photos. Yet the same producers, the same creative teams, the same conversations happening behind closed doors. This wasn't accidental overlap. It was coordinated distance. Then came the leak, but not the kind fans expected. It wasn't about Faye and Yoko directly. It was about a third name. A co-star. The initial whispers were vague. A newcomer, some said. Others insisted it was a seasoned actor returning after a long break. No one could agree, except on one thing. This person wasn't chosen for fame. They were chosen for fit. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. This wasn't just about Faye and Yoko collaborating. It was about a project being designed, not announced. Built around chemistry, balance, and control rather than hype. Fans began to speculate that this wasn't meant to explode instantly, but to unfold deliberately. Episode by episode. Appearance by appearance. Letting curiosity do the work marketing usually does. And it worked. By late March, anticipation had replaced speculation. Social media didn't feel chaotic, it felt focused. Edits appeared overnight. Old clips recontextualized. Even neutral observers began asking the same question. Why does this feel different? The answer came slowly. Because nothing about this was rushed. Faye's image began to shift subtly. No drastic rebranding, just sharper choices. Cleaner silhouettes. More deliberate language. Interviews that said less, but meant more. Yoko mirrored that energy, tightening her public presence, choosing depth over frequency. They weren't chasing attention. They were curating it. Then came the biggest tell of all. March ended without an announcement. No reveal. No trailer. No confirmation. And yet, by April, everyone was talking about them anyway. That's when fans realized the truth. March wasn't the launch. March was the lock-in. By April, industry insiders stopped speaking in hypotheticals. Phrases like "if it happens" quietly disappeared. Conversations shifted to "when audiences finally see it" and "once the first reveal drops." And still, nothing official. Instead, Yoko posted a single image. No caption. No tag. Just a visual that fans dissected for days. Faye followed a week later with a quote that felt unrelated, until fans connected it to Yoko's post. Not a confirmation. A conversation. Between them. By then, the co-star leak evolved again. It wasn't just about who the person was, it was about why their identity was being protected so carefully. Fans began to believe this role was the pivot point of the entire story. The piece that would reframe everything once revealed. And that secrecy made one thing clear. This wasn't built for shock value. It was built for endurance. By mid-April, the tone changed completely. Entertainment reporters stopped asking if Faye Yoko was happening. They started asking how far it would go. Would it redefine their careers? Would it shift industry expectations? Would it change how partnerships were formed going forward? And that's when fans understood something crucial. Faye and Yoko weren't entering 2026 to compete. They were entering to set the pace. The March takeover wasn't loud because it didn't need to be. It was strategic. Surgical. Every move measured. Every silence intentional. Every delay calculated to build pressure without release. And when pressure builds long enough, the release becomes unforgettable. As April edged toward May, whispers of the first official reveal began circulating. Not a trailer, but a title. Not a press conference, but a controlled leak. Something small enough to spark conversation, big enough to confirm everything fans already believed. One insider put it simply. When it drops, it won't feel like news. It'll feel like inevitability. Because by then, the world wouldn't be discovering Faye Yoko. It would be catching up to them. And that's the real story of 2026. Not a sudden rise. Not a viral moment. Not a manufactured headline. But a quiet takeover that started long before anyone noticed. March was never about visibility. It was about control. And now, with the secret co-star still unrevealed, the project still unnamed, and anticipation sitting at a boiling point, one truth is undeniable. Faye Yoko isn't asking for attention. They're deciding when to accept it. And when that moment finally arrives, 2026 won't just remember it. It will be defined by it.